Hey, it's Jeff Romo here with InnRoads Ministries, bringing you the next episode in our Summer of One Shots tour. This is going to be an intro into Stars Without Numbers. It's an old school yarn. It's got some rules in there that a lot of you old grognards out there are going to recognize pretty quick when it comes to some of the 70s era's RPGs out there. They've added in a few things like a skill set that we'll talk a little bit about later on as we get into some of the different topics for this game. So first off, I want to give a huge shout out and thanks to Zach and TR and Jay and Justin. I mean, come on, and then Chris. All of these guys are joining up to form a crew for this little one-shot experience with Stars Without Number. So let's talk a little bit about what this game's about. It's set far, far in the future, the year 3200. The human race has scattered themselves to the far reaches of the galaxy using what's called faster-than-light travel. But more importantly, they've been able to tap into the inner potential of every person to become psychic. And those psychics have helped create these gates, these wormholes that sent people out throughout the reaches of the known universe. Now, the interesting thing here is that at some point, there was a backlash, what's called the Scream, and that separated humanity from the core worlds. So our story kind of relates, the game world relates around these scattered worlds out there in the outer rim, to borrow a phrase. And they are out there surviving. Some planets were dedicated only for minerals and for mining, that sort of thing, so they may not have a society that was able to support themselves on their own. So these planets have banded together using old technology, what's called spike drives. Interstellar travel basically shifts you from one reality to the next as you zip your way to another system. Now, we can talk a little bit more about that during the game. So that's the backdrop. That's the background that's going to be involved with this adventure. As we go into this recording, we're going to talk about a few things. First off, we're going to launch into character creation. Similar to what we did with the Dungeon World intro, I want to make sure that you guys know exactly how to create a character in this system, how it plays, how that character plays and interacts with its world. Next off, we'll talk about how skills work and then how combat works. And then throughout this whole thing, I'm going to be filling out some information in Roll20. There'll be a separate video out there on how to incorporate Roll20 into your Stars Without Number game or other games on your mind. But when you see the character sheet, it's going to be specific to Roll20, so you'll see me filling that out as we go. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to go ahead and just jump right into character creation. So there's our book cover. That is the beautiful full tome. It is available in PDF. You can check that out at DriveThruRPG or other PDF sources, or even at your local game store. We're going to jump down to page 6, where it starts off with character creation. Let's get this nice little summary here of how we do this. So within Stars Without Numbers, you're going to have a few steps within the creation process. Some of these we may kind of overlook because it is a one-shot, but when you are designing a character in Stars Without Number, for the most part, you're going to be dealing with the idea of being in a sandbox, being able to explore your character's development on a variety of levels. In doing so, you're going to be bringing up backgrounds, you're going to be bringing up their home world, and then you'll be sketching a line across the various solar systems that they've visited in the past. So let's run through it. The first thing is, of course, rolling those dice. We're going to go old school here, and we're going to roll 3d6 down the line. And you'll notice that there are the same types of attributes that you would find in any other D&D, Shadowrun, well, maybe a few other games that incorporate this 6 stat attribute setup. So you have strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. So let's do it. Let's, you know what? Actually, I'm going to take you over to Roll20, and we are going to roll us some dice. Here we are at Roll20. I want to go ahead and show you a little bit about how some of the dice roll works. I'm going to go ahead and do 3d6 down the line. So let's do it. We're going to do /roll 3d6. Here we go. Oh, check it out. I'm going to be able to, bam, roll those dice. Here we go. And that's an 8. not too good so far, if we're going to be honest. So I will go ahead and I will fill in the 8 within strength. Let's roll our decks next. And what I'll do is I'm just going to hit the up key on this. It's going to bring back the same roll that I was about to throw, or that I threw up earlier. Let's throw up something a little bit different, and boom! Oh my gosh, a 9. Okay, this isn't the end of the world, folks. We're going to be okay. Don't worry. Next up, we are going to go ahead and do the up version, and boom! Here we go. I might disable this, so I'll just roll those dice. That's an 8. Not looking too good, kids. Not looking too good for your Uncle Jeff. All right. Next one. Oh, that's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. Got a 10 for my intelligence. Looks like we might be rolling up an expert. Oh my goodness, a 13 in wisdom. Yeah, that is most likely going to be an expert for us. We'll talk about character classes in just a second. Oh, bam. There we go. Charisma. Yes. Yes. I have a feeling that an expert is exactly what we're going to be rolling up here. So let's see. That is a 14. Okay. So we've got our stats all rolled up. Let's jump back over to the book here. And next up we have choosing a class. Now choosing a class is very, very simple in this game, and I'll tell you why, because there's only 3 classes really to choose from. So we roll our stats. The 3 classes that we have available are the expert, the psychic, and the warrior. So the first one is the expert. With the expert, you'll be able to sort yourself into either maybe a pilot, you could be a doctor, a xenobiologist, a xenoarchaeologist, you could be a technician on a ship, an engineer, you could even be a con artist. The expert is also kind of rolled into this situation. And in fact, with the charisma that I rolled at a 13, I believe, let me make sure of that number, no, a 14, boom, 13 wisdom. I think I may have a pretty good looking con artist coming up here. So taking a look at what is involved with each of the classes, the expert, each class is going to have its own special ability, a special thing that it can do. And so the special thing for experts is they have a knack for success. They can re-roll failed skill checks only, not combat or saves, that sort of thing. And they can do that once per game hour. So not in-game, but outside of game in real life. Once an hour, they refresh that ability to re-roll. So it'll be up to the player, at least in my book, it'll be up to the player to make sure they remind the GM that they're going to be able to re-roll that dice. So for our one shot, we may go around 3 or 4 hours, so they may have 3 or 4 opportunities to be able to re-roll. Next up are psychics. Psychics have the ability to either use meta-psionics, they also have telekinesis, other variations that are available, and only psychics can learn these types of powers. No other class has that available. And then lastly, we have warriors. Warriors are your space troopers. They could be anything ranging from a lowly soldier to a hired mercenary, all the way up to potentially a space marine if they get outfitted properly and they roll the better stats than I did. And for these guys, for warriors, they have the uncanny knack on the battlefield. And that basically means that once per fight, they can automatically evade an attack that would have basically given them a little bit of harm. And they can wait until after the GM has rolled the damage in order to determine if this is where they want to go ahead and say, I think I'm going to sidestep this one. So there you go. There's our classes. And I think we talked about it before. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a, let's see here. Let's call him Corvin. And male. And his class is expert, and I'm going to go ahead and give him a level 1. So, all right, excellent. So we've got our first setup as far as a class goes. Let's go on to the next bit here, and that is choosing a background and training package. The background is going to give you a little bit of information on where you're from, what you've done in the past, maybe where you went to school, or did you go to the School of Hard Knocks. Whatever that case may be, you can choose that within the background package area. what I'll do is I'll end up, since I've made a con artist, I'm going to go with con artist as the way they've grown up. So the way it reads here is some thieves get what they want with a gun, but others find it easier with a kind word and a smile. That might be my guy. Con artists are wise to keep moving ahead of their angry marks, but the trip can be an enjoyable one. So when you pick a background package, it's going to allot you a certain number of skills. In this one here, you'll see that it has culture criminal, culture world, persuade, and stealth. When you see these skills that have a slash before it, it means that the first level is a general skill, and then you have the specialty that's within it, what you're going to focus on. So I could potentially have 3 or 4 culture skills, but one may be criminal, one may be spacer, which is the life amongst the stars for people who don't like to be on terra firma. You also have cultural world, which is going to be the place where I would come from. I'm thinking that potentially in a one-shot, unless we're going to be spending time specifically on a world that this particular player or players are from, I may have them switch that skill out for something else to make it a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more diverse within the crew, and then have fun with this one shot where there's not a skill that's gone to waste. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Con Artist. So let me show you a little bit about what I've done so far. Here is our display for Roll20. I'm going to bring up the character sheet here. So as you can see, I've gone through and marked up my strength through charisma attributes. You can see along the top here that Roll20 has been kind enough to go ahead and insert the modifiers there so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. For an 8 to 13, I'm not going to get any bonuses here. But for 14 to 17, which includes my charisma, I'm going to get a +1. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. If I've named him Corvin, he's a male, he's an expert, he's a level 1. My background, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, not Vaughn, but Con Artist. And below here, I can go ahead and take a look at my skill sets. So I have got, let's see here, Culture Criminal. So I'm going to bring that up to a 0. We'll talk about what that means in just a moment. We're going to have Culture World for now. Let's just say he's from that place. And let's see here, he's also got Stealth as well. And I believe, if I go back and double check my list, he's also got Persuade. So let's bring that up to a 0. So there's your background package. So you've got a bunch here. There's other stuff like Transport Specialist, Tribesman, if you want to be from a rather backward world, or a tech level that's below a 3 or a 4, which would include space travel. Tech level 2 is something like your Renaissance level. So let's go ahead and talk about skills and what those mean. Within the system, skill checks are going to be involved in a small tiered system. This is almost a brief add-on to the old school rules that you and I might be a little bit more comfortable with, or used to at least. So in instances where you are not even skilled at something, you don't know how to do it. Like my character probably is not going to know how to fly a ship. He's probably had somebody help him move from system to system. In effect, he just doesn't know how to fly a ship. So in this case, the way it has it laid out here, if you have no skill, you'll remember the character sheet. It shows that I had a -1 in everything until I came along and bumped it up to a 0. The background package gives you 1 point to add to your skills. So that's going to bump you up 1. That's going to put me at a 0 for the skills that have been allotted to me through my background package. If you have no skill, that character is completely untrained in the skill, and he or she might still be able to attempt it, but the task is, as long as it's simple enough, but it's complex and demanding, sometimes it's just not going to work for them. So when they roll their dice, and we'll talk about dice in a few minutes here, when they roll their dice, they're going to be at a -1, and that can be modified by your attributes, that sort of thing. As you start getting better, you get a 0 in there, you've trained in it, you've started to become good at this. 1, you're a professional. This character has a normal professional skill in the field, so if, let's say, I became an avid card player and I was really good at Persuade, maybe that's something that I could use, or maybe I'm a negotiator, that sort of thing. Next up is Expert level, that's a +2, a Master level +3, and then on up to Legendary, which is a +4. It becomes more and more expensive to buy these skills as you go in the game. Especially, it depends on the type of class that you've chosen, one of the 3, that determines also the expense of skills. So here's some of the other character skills that are available. We talked about combat or culture, how you may have a different type of culture skill, a more specialized skill. So for instance, traveler would be those who are experts in traveling, who pick up rumors as they go from one station to the next. Combat has a similar approach, depending upon where you're from or the types of training that you think you should have, whether you're, an expert, a psionicist, or a warrior. You can have a specialty in a particular combat instance. So energy weapons like laser beams, gunnery. So if you're going to be sitting in the turret, getting cocky and shooting types of fighters, then that's what's going to happen. You'll have gunnery. On down to projectile weapons, unarmed, primitive weapons, so the knives and spears, bows and arrows, that sort of thing. So you've got a wide variety of skills that are available to you. Now we're talking about the expert package and what that brings to the table. So in this case here, you've got various class traits. You've got prime attributes, which are intelligence, charisma, which I rolled decently on. Your hit dice, meaning how much hit points you're going to get, is going to be a result of a d6. When you first start, we were talking a little bit about hit points before, you are going to start off with the max. I think for this one shot, that's what we'll do, is we'll have a 6 plus whatever con modifiers that you have. So if I go roll over to my Roll20 screen, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add in hit points, put up to 6. Boom. Done, because I don't have a con modifier. Thankfully, that 8 isn't going to give me a -1. That's nice. We'll roll back to our book display here. So as you start rolling up in the experience, you'll see here as well that every time you level up, you're going to be rolling dice. You're going to find out exactly how much hit points you have, and you could very well go down. Maybe something happened as you moved up a level. Maybe you got sick. That could be worked into the narrative of the game. Alright, so back up here, we've got our special ability, like a charm. So this is what we were talking about before. Once per hour, the expert can re-roll a failed skill check. The second roll must be used, even if it's worse. And then lastly, the expert class skills, all except for combat skills, tactics, and tech sci-tech. So these are the ones that are going to be exceptioned from that re-roll. So you can't re-roll combat, you can't re-roll tactics, you can't re-roll tech sci-tech, and that's something that's a little bit too much into the weeds for this broadcast. Last up, you have your attack bonuses at the bottom, your saving throws. So with this here, for levels 1 through 4, you have physical effect save. Maybe you're getting jarred around in the vessel. It loses the inertial dampeners and you start getting squeezed into the chair of your ship. Mental effect save, you're getting attacked by psionicists. Maybe you're getting involved with something extremely fearful. You're fearful for your life. Evasion, so this is kind of like a dodge. A tech save is something similar, like if you're going to be detected by someone or something. Potentially, if you're trying to be stealthy in your ship and you're getting scanned, maybe a tech save might be in order. And finally, a luck save. Luck save is basically, did you get lucky? When I set off on this voyage, did I remember to bring my underpants or a vac suit? Luck save. Let's find out if you did. You didn't mention it before, but maybe you're lucky. Now, let's see here. Expert training packages. So in this case here, this is the next level of skills that you're going to be able to bring to bear as your game goes. So in this case here, I could pick pilot, so that's going to give me the ability to be a pilot of a vessel. Probably vehicle space is the one I would choose. I could be a criminal, so that I could pick up other forms of enhancements to my idea of a con artist. Could be a bounty hunter, could be an adventuring expert. That's kind of your more general one where you can select at least 4 skills that can be involved, as that must include the expert class. And then I think for this one, I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll pick criminal, just so that way I know exactly. I'm going down the line. I'm just making sure that this is exactly where I want to be. So my training package, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Training package, I'm going to go ahead and pick criminal. And I'm going to go bump down here to the skills list, and I'm going to find out exactly what I get. I'm going to get business, so I'm going to give them the business. I'm going to get combat, primitive weapons, boom, so like knives, maybe I carry a knife on my person somewhere. I'm going to have culture criminal. Now, since I already have culture criminal, I can go ahead and raise that again. So now instead of just a 0 under culture criminal, I actually have a 1. So that's going to add a 1 to my dice rolls. Let's see, criminal also gives me gambling, perception, and persuade. So let's go ahead and add in gambling. Persuade's going to bump up to a 1, and perception's going to go to a 0. And survival, tech, post-tech, and vehicle any. So this is my chance to actually still be a ship's pilot. So let's see here. So I'm going to have survival. I'm going to have tech, post-tech. So this is the technology that's after the Scream. The technology that was before the Scream that I mentioned at the beginning of this segment is exponentially better. This is like the super futuristic stuff that you would see in comics or in cartoons or in movies. After the Scream, technology kind of reverted back to almost I don't want to say a Blade Runner level, but it's that kind of, man, we've got to really work hard to keep this stuff working type of situation. Some planets that got separated don't even have that much. So again, further into the history than we need to go into for this video. All right, so I've got tech, post-tech, and let's see here. You know what? Vehicle any I can pick. Why don't I do vehicle grav? Maybe I've been in a car chase of some kind at some point. You never know. All right, so we are done there. Skills are basically the bread and butter of most of the game when you're going to be doing some dice rolls. You're going to have your sudden and climactic battles that are going to involve combat, but that's a different set of dice we're going to be working with. When you're talking about skills, you're going to be talking about 2d6 along with an attribute modifier, plus whatever you may have in a given skill that you are proficient in. So let's bounce back over to our book display and talk a little bit about that. So skill checks. So over on the right hand side, you'll be able to see the difficulties you'll run into when rolling dice for your skill checks. So if it's something super simple, like you need to tie a knot and it only needs to last a couple seconds, boom, no check, I'm going to let you go ahead and do the thing you want. Easier things, maybe a little bit more difficult. They have some great examples here. You're trying to sprint over a narrow bridge. That's a 6. Let's say you're sprinting over a palm-wide bridge, so something very narrow. That's an 8. You're sprinting over a tightrope. That's a 9. And an 11 is something even more difficult. And the 13 is just completely epic. A huge target number. You're trying to lift a starship. It could be anything like that. Something Herculean. Now, as you're rolling your dice, you're going to be rolling 2d6, and again, it's going to be plus your modifier, plus or minus your modifier in relation to that skill check. So let's take a look at some of the skills that I have available. So let's say that we're going to be trying to do a persuade, and I want to say that for this person, I want them to persuade somebody about the effectiveness of a starship. So I want to tell them that the ship that I'm on, which may look like a hunk of junk, actually works spectacularly, and I need to persuade this person about that. So would I use my charisma to try and charm them? Would I use my intelligence, my knowledge that I have about starships? Would I use my wisdom on saying that, you know what, sometimes you don't just need something that looks good, you need something that actually survives, and this thing will survive. So kind of adding your wisdom and how much it's brought you through certain scrapes. But let's say that, for instance, we're going to go ahead and choose that. And I want to show you one of the cool things about Roll20 that allows you to make some choices here. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this up. So let's try Persuade. It's going to ask me on here, what attribute am I going to use? And let's say I'm going to use Charisma. That's my best one. So I'm going to try and be real slick. Is this assisted? Somebody else who might be with me and the crew might be able to go ahead and roll a similar attribute or a similar skill that would help me. So let's say they know a whole slew about ships and I don't know anything. They could add in some information about this particular model. That's super awesome. Let's say they add in, they give me a 1 bonus on this. And then boom, it rolls the dice. I got a 9. So I roll a 2 and a 4, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, so that's a total of 9. That's a pretty darn good success. And most likely, if somebody was going to come at me as a GM and tell me that they needed to buy a ship or they needed to sell a ship, I would probably give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's rolling up dice with your skills. Those are the skill checks. Next up, let's talk about combat. So, fighting. We've talked about 2d6s, being able to use this. Well, we're going to be using a d20 for this one instead. So, completely different, right? No. And it's going to add in some of the modifiers from particular skills that are relevant. So if you have combat primitive weapons like I do, you can add that into your combat roll. In addition, whatever attribute modifier that would go along with it, so if I'm using a knife, I'd need to use my strength, which is a 0. It wouldn't have a modifier there. And then any kind of attack bonus that would go along with it. These bonuses can come from types of weapons. When you're using gunnery, sometimes a ship's weapon will give you an added bonus. Laser rifles give you a +1 due to accuracy and the ability to shoot and not have any recoil. So let's take a look at what an attack would look like in our system. So I'll come up here and I'm going to do a base attack off of my character sheet here. And what does that look like once you select that? It's going to ask you about the AC of your target. Now what's kind of interesting here, and this goes back to that old school, is that the higher the AC of an individual, the less armor they have. Let's say my target's rather squishy. And I'm going to say that, you know what, they probably have, I don't know, a leather jacket. And that's going to give them an armor class of maybe an 8. So I'll put it in 8. Now my combat skill bonus, when it comes to what I have for primitive weapons on my skill sheet is listed as a 0. So I don't get a bonus there, but I at least don't get a -1. And then my attribute modifier. I'm going to be using strength to try and make this happen, but unfortunately strength is an 8, and that is a 0 when it comes to modifiers. So here we go. Rolls that d20. Ooh, crit. I crit. I crit. I should be a lot happier than this, but the thing is that only you people out there know that I actually crit. It's alright. I can take it. So here we go. Here's the idea of combat. If you hit anything above a 20, you hit the target. On a critical, it's an automatic success. There's no multiplier of damage. And then if you roll a 1, it's an auto failure, no matter how good you are at a particular combat skill. So in my case, I whipped out my knife, I stuck the guy, done. Deal's done. So I'm going to roll my damage, whatever that may be, from the weapon. So remember, combat skills means you're going to add in your target's armor class. You're going to add in the combat skill modifier, your attribute modifier, and then finally any attack bonuses that you might get from, you know, whatever given weapon that you're using. And as long as it gets a 20 or more, you hit. So that's combat in a nutshell. So that is Stars Without Number. We've gone through character creation, we've talked about skill checks, we've talked about the combat system, and we could go deeper. We could talk a little bit more about how this game is really geared towards a sandbox style of play. It has rules for handling factions, whether they're player controlled or they are GM controlled. They have rules for managing entire sector. When you looked at the Roll20 map that was behind the scenes, that is a sector that was put together for space travel. So you would go between planets, you would navigate how much drive juice it's going to take to get there. It's a great opportunity for game masters to be able to dabble in sandbox styles of play, because you can borrow some of the rules that are created here and port them into other games. Hint, hint, I've done this before, because the faction design system here is great, because it goes through not just who they are, but what are their motivations, what's some of their goals, that sort of thing. So you have character sheets, you have faction sheets, you have sector maps that you can work through, you have character sheets for your starship of choice. And for our players, for Stars Without Numbers, they're going to start off with a starship. It's going to be a free trader class, which is kind of like your fastest junk in the galaxy type class, if you know what I mean, or a certain fiery type ship class. That would be what we would be dealing with for this game. So I hope you've enjoyed this discussion about Stars Without Number. I hope you guys will go out there and check it out on drive-thru or your PDF or your game store of choice. The core rules are actually free. If you go to drivethrurpg.com, you can get a free version of these rules that do not include artificial intelligence or mecha. It should be, you know, kind of like your Space Marine type stuff. But it's a great way to delve into this game and get started. And actually, I've run an entire campaign off of the free version, so you have a lot of fun, a lot of options there. So thanks a lot for being here. As always, you can check the show notes to learn a little bit more about InnRoads Ministries. You can visit us at InnRoadsMinistries.com. You can follow me on Twitter at GSPKheegan, GSP Keegan on Twitter, and you can also find me just as Jeff Romo on Facebook. I'll be in the tavern posting nonsense here and there, and then also you can follow InnRoads itself on Twitter at InnRoads. That's it. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you guys tune in for the highlights of our Stars Without Number game within the Summer of One Shots.